remember those partial S-shaped pieces that we cut because the edge of our fabric, we didn't get a full S-shaped curve? Well, I'm going to show you how you can get some bonus shapes out of that partial S-shaped curve. Sometimes when I want to make a flower like a poinsettia, I need some smaller petal shapes that are not a complete S-shaped curve because those would just be too large to make your poinsettia. So we can take advantage of those partial shapes and we can recut those shapes using the curve to cut away that end of the fabric that's not very pretty to look at. So we'll just use the curve and place it in such a way that it makes a more graceful shape. And that becomes a little bonus petal. Now the reason why I love to use these bonus petals, because I'm cutting them just a couple at a time, each petal becomes very unique and looks a little bit different. So as you are designing a flower, you have a lot of different petal shapes to work with. So your flower has a very natural, organic look rather than having cookie cutter shapes that all look exactly the same. And you're taking advantage of those ends of the fabric so you're not wasting any fabric and you're able to get these beautiful petals. Now some of your petals will curve in one direction. Other petals, if they were made while cutting RZs, they will curve in the opposite direction. So it gives that flower a very natural look. In a previous video, we made this flower with our standard shape leaves, and we tucked under some standard shape leaves to be leaves for our flower. Now I'm going to make the same flower, but instead of using the standard shape leaves, I'm going to use green leaves cut into the lemon shaped leaf. Now some of these lemon shaped leaves are only partial, but that doesn't matter because having them tucked up under the flower, you don't see the entire leaf anyway. So I can cut those leaves right in half if I want to and place them underneath my flower as well. So the lemon-shaped leaf makes a beautiful leaf for sunflowers, daisies, poinsettias. Just about any flower looks better with a lemon-shaped leaf behind it. The next shape that I want to show you, or the next flower I'd like to show you, is our tulip flower. And we're going to make our tulip using an S and a Z shaped curve. Here's our S-shaped curve, and then we're going to use a Z. So we have our S-shaped curve, our Z-shaped curve, and now we need the center for that flower, which would be a 5-inch curve cut into a standard leaf shape. So our S and our Z were made with the medium template, but our center portion was made with the smallest template. And it makes a beautiful tulip, just like the tulip vine quilt behind me. Those S and Z-shaped curves are also used for making ribbons and ropes on our quilt. So I'd like to show you how to make a ribbon or a rope. So I've marked a line down the center of a piece of fabric. So this could be a border or it could be a row in a quilt. You need that centering line. You're going to take your S-shaped curves to make a ribbon, and I've cut that S shape in 2 different shades of a blue. That helps to make that ribbon look like it's flipping around your quilt. So we're going to place an S-shaped curve with both the tip and the tail on that straight line. Now we're going to take the next color, the different shade of blue, tuck up that next S shape from the left-hand side, tuck that tip under. It naturally wants to fall right over this tail, and we're going to end on that straight line. We can continue in this manner, adding S-shaped curves by tucking it up under from the left-hand side. We're overlapping by about the same amount every time, by about 1 inch, and ending that S-shaped curve on a line. Now when you've come to the end of your ribbon, you want it to end in a beautiful little tail. So I would take this very last S-shaped curve and I would fold it in half across its widest point, use my scissors or a rotary cutter to make a straight cut. And that becomes the tail end of your ribbon. Tuck it up under from the left-hand side. Make sure that overlap is about the same, and you've got a beautiful end to your ribbon. Now, a rope can be made in a very similar way, but instead of one line, we really need 2 lines. Now that we've marked 2 lines, 2.5 inches apart, we're going to use those S-shaped curves that we cut with the 3-inch template and place them between the 2 lines. It's about a 45-degree angle between the lines. We're going to continue to add S-shaped curves, tucking this end up under from the left-hand side and having this end tuck under in this direction. Continue to add your pieces and keep them nice and tight together so there's no gap here between the 2 pieces. Each end gets tucked up under the previous one in each direction. So you're nesting these ends together, and at the same time, you're keeping the edges of your S-curve between those 2 marked lines. Now I've marked those lines with a chalk wheel filled with iron erase chalk because this is all fusible applique. When I fuse this applique in place, all of my chalk lines, all of the dust will disappear and my applique is complete and ready for stitching. Now, one other shape that I'd like to show you how to assemble is a dragonfly. Now, do you remember in a previous video, we cut standard leaf shapes and we trimmed those leaf shapes down to be a smaller size. When we did this, we went from a 3-inch leaf to about a 2.5-inch leaf. Now, with those pieces, we can make a beautiful dragonfly. The piece that we removed can be the center or his body, and then we're going to add some narrow wings. Because you trimmed the 3-inch curve down, it makes these leaves narrow and just the perfect size for my dragonfly wings. So this little curved body that we have was the waste that we had from trimming down that 3-inch leaf into a 2.5-inch leaf. It makes a beautiful little body, or you could cut a straight piece of fabric to be used for the body of the dragonfly. Next, I'd like to show you how to use my quilter's chalk line to make guidelines for your applique.